So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, wherever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm talking about the good, the bad, and the best Doctor Who Christmas specials, and I give you my ranking of all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials as well. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers. But if you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course. And please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Doctor Who Christmas specials. The good, the bad, and the best. And that's what I'm talking about today. So, in this podcast, as what I said, I'm talking about the Doctor Who Christmas specials. But I'm only talking about the Doctor Who Christmas specials in the modern Who era. Like, I'm not talking about any of the Doctor Who Christmas specials that took place between when the show started in 1963 to when it got cancelled, when, I think, Sylvester McCoy, very different, very, very different actor. But when the show got cancelled with Sylvester McCoy. I'm not talking about any Christmas specials which took place during the classic era of Doctor Who. No, I'm talking about only Christmas specials that aired from Christopher Eccleston's era onwards, when the show got rebooted by Russell T Davies. However, as far as I'm aware, Christopher Eccleston didn't actually have any Doctor Who Christmas specials during his era. So really, I'm talking about all the Doctor Who Christmas specials that took place from David Tennant's era onwards. And those specials include, let's see if I can get them all now off the top of my head, let's see if I can remember them all. Christmas Invasion, then you had The Runaway Bride, The Voyage of the Damned, The Next Doctor, The End of Time, Part 1 and 2, A Christmas Carol, The Doctor, The Door, and The Wardrobe, The Time of the Doctor, the Snowmen, The Time of the Doctor, Last Christmas, The Husbands of River Song, The Return of Dr. Mysterio, and Twice Upon a Time. Those are the 13 specials I am talking about in terms of Doctor Who. Those are the 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials that I am talking about in this podcast today. I will not be talking about any of the Jodie Whittaker New Year's Day specials, because, you've guessed it already, they released on New Year's Day. Also, those specials wouldn't be too high in my ranking, because even so I didn't mind the first of the Jodie Whittaker New Year's Day specials, they're not particularly memorable in my opinion, and I'm not including them because they came out on New Year's Day. The Doctor Who Christmas specials have to have come out on Christmas Day for me to consider them in my ranking and in this podcast today. So that's what I'm doing. I'm talking about the 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials that came out between David Tennant's run to Peter Capaldi's run. That came out between all three Doctors, David Tennant, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi. I'm doing this in anticipation, of course, for the new Doctor Who Christmas special. Yes, we've got the return of Doctor Who Christmas specials on Christmas Day this year, which is not far away now. On Christmas Day this year, I will be sitting down to watch The Church on Ruby Road, the new Doctor Who Christmas special, the first full episode centering around Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor, and I, for one, cannot wait. And that's why I am talking about all the past Christmas specials in preparation and excitement, in anticipation for Ncuti Gatwa's first episode and for the return of Doctor Who Christmas specials this year, because it's been 5 years, if I got the maths right, it's been 5 years since the last Doctor Who Christmas special. The last Doctor Who Christmas special was Twice Upon a Time, which came out in 2017, and that was the episode where Peter Capaldi regenerated into Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. And it's been 5 years since we've got a proper Christmas special since then, because I do not count the New Year's Day specials at all. Anyway, before I get into talking about each episode, each Christmas special individually, I'm first going to talk about the things I learnt while I was watching all 13 of these specials. The song Merry Christmas Everybody by Slade, so here it is, Merry Christmas, is used quite a lot in these Doctor Who Christmas specials. I'm pretty sure it's used in Christmas Invasion, although I haven't watched that in a couple of weeks, so I don't remember for certain, but I'm pretty sure it's used then. It's definitely used in The Runaway Bride. I'm pretty sure it's used in End of Time Part 1 and 2. It's definitely used in Last Christmas. And so the point I'm making is it's used more than I was expecting it to be. It's a great song, and it's one of my personal favourite Christmas songs. But I was surprised by how many times it actually was used in these Doctor Who Christmas specials. Also, another thing I noticed, and this is all subjective, people are going to have different opinions on these Doctor Who Christmas specials, and that's great. That's the point of talking and discussing film and TV online. So this is just from my point of view, but I feel like the Russ T Davies era of Doctor Who and the Christmas specials that came along with his era are more accessible to casual fans of Doctor Who and to non-fans of Doctor Who. Like, they have the sci-fi elements in there, but they're more accessible. The stories that we can, latch onto without having to think about too much. Whilst you get to Stephen Moffat here, and Stephen Moffat was a showrunner during the Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi era as Doctor Who, and what happened there was he made many of the Christmas specials, and although I'm not saying that any of the Christmas specials during Stephen Moffat's era were bad, although there's one that I straight up disliked during his era, which I'll get onto a bit later in this podcast. But although I'm not saying that any of the Doctor Who Christmas specials during his era were bad, they feel very fairy tale-like. They feel almost like a fairy tale, and like Stephen Moffat doesn't really know what to do and doesn't really know how to write a Christmas special. And they also feel a bit sci-fi heavy at times, to the point that I'm sat there going, no, you completely lost me in a couple of the Christmas specials which Stephen Moffat wrote. So personally, when I was rewatching these Doctor Who Christmas specials, I realised that I prefer the Russell T Davies written ones. People may have different opinions on that. People may prefer the Stephen Moffat written Doctor Who Christmas specials. And that's the beauty of the subjectivity of TV. But personally, the Russell T Davies specials the Russ T Davies written Doctor Who Christmas specials during the David Tennant era just get the whole idea of a Doctor Who Christmas special spot on, in my opinion. And another note that I want to say is, personally for me, I prefer the Doctor Who Christmas specials that are not connected to other episodes that much. Like, I don't mind if there's some connectivity to other non-Christmassy Doctor Who episodes in the Christmas special. Like, my favourite Doctor Who Christmas special, I won't say what it is yet, but my favourite of the Doctor Who Christmas specials has a big reference to the previous Doctor Who episode that went on before it. So I don't mind if there's a little bit of connectivity, because it's Doctor Who in the end. It's a TV show. But when it's a straight up setup for the next season of Doctor Who, or when it's connecting to all these different sections that have just happened in the series beforehand of Doctor Who, it starts to alienate me and it starts to annoy me. So I prefer when the Doctor Who Christmas specials are more self-contained and more accessible to audiences, and are more just straight up entertaining, thrilling, and give you that Christmassy feel, because that is what the best Doctor Who Christmas specials should do. They should make you feel Christmassy. So, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on the first Doctor Who Christmas special. And that is Christmas Invasion, which released on Christmas Day 2005. And this was the first Doctor Who episode, the very first Doctor Who episode, and it's odd to say this now, but this was the very first Doctor Who episode to include David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. And I think this is a really enjoyable episode. I love the villain of the Sycorax. I love the Sycorax as the villains in this episode. I love seeing Penelope Wilton back as... Oh, what's her name here? Oh, I forgot her name is now off the top of my head. I'll have to put it down somewhere. Harriet Jones, that's it. Harriet Jones. And it starts to thread some of the plots for later on during David Tennant's era, because we see at the end of this episode that the 10th Doctor has this disagreement with the Prime Minister, played by Penelope Wilton, Harriet Jones. We see that the Doctor has a disagreement with her, and then she comes back in Stolen Earth when the Daleks are invading the Earth and Davros is back and everything like that, and we see that she's trying to pay back the Doctor for the thing that she did wrong. I forgot what it is at the top of my head right now. But yeah, I love how she's in there. I love how Rose is a companion. You see Mickey and you see Jackie, who's Rose's mum. And there's a lot of great moments in this episode where, you know, it's the first of the Christmas specials that you see the robot Santas. The killing robot Santas that are all playing Christmas carols on their brass instruments. Then they turn the brass instruments around and use the instruments as weapons. And personally, as a brass player, I think that's genius. I think that's absolutely genius, because I play the cornet in a brass band, and I remember when I first saw that happen in Doctor Who, where the robot Santas turn around the brass instruments and use them as weapons. I used to do that myself. Occasionally, I must admit, I used to do that myself. Also, I love when the Christmas tree is trying to kill Rose's family, and Jackie goes, "My Christmas tree is trying to kill me," and it's just a funny line. And even so, with some of the CGI in that episode and some of the visual effects and whatnot, are a bit outdated. And even so, the episode does look like it came out in 2005, and I would have liked there to be more of David Tennant in the episode. I understand that. I understand why he's not in the episode, but I still would like there to be a little bit... I mean, he is in the episode, but he's unconscious throughout most of the episode. But I would like there to be a bit more of him still. But even all that, I think the episode is wildly entertaining and a great introduction to the 10th Doctor, to David Tennant's the 10th Doctor, because when you properly see him for the first time, the camera starts to track in on the TARDIS and he walks out and he says, "Did he miss me?" And then he has that sword fight with the Sycorax. He loses his arm, and then obviously that comes back later on in the David Tennant era of Doctor Who, people remember. I think it's just a fantastic start to the 10th Doctor's era, to David Tennant's era as the 10th Doctor. So yeah, I love Christmas Invasion. Although, I don't quite love it as much as the next Doctor Who Christmas special, which was, of course, The Runaway Bride, which came out on Christmas Day 2006. So this was the first Doctor Who episode to include Catherine Tate as Donna Noble. Now she's come back quite a few times. You know, she came back in Series 4 to be the Doctor's companion. Then she was in the last two specials, which David Tennant was in, you know, End of Time Part 1 and 2, which I'll talk about very shortly. And then she returned for the Doctor Who 6th Anniversary specials, which was the greatest gift in the world when I heard that. It made me smile so much, because I think she is the best Doctor's companion. You know, there's no romantic connection there. It's like brother and sister, and there's so much comedy, and you really feel that in this episode. The Runaway Bride is simply fantastic. I love this one to pieces. I love this Doctor Who Christmas special so much. And you have the robot Santas back with the brass instruments, with the deathly brass instruments. You have the killing Christmas tree back at one point. And right from the start of the episode, the writing is on point. You know, Donna disappears from her own wedding. She's getting married, and then she somehow transports to the TARDIS. And the Doctor's like, "What?" And, you know, just from the get-go, Rusty Davies creates his mystery surrounding, how did that happen? What's going on? And you are in. You are engaged, you are captivated, and Rusty Davies throughout the episode keeps you captivated, alongside performances from David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, who was always brilliant in that role, and Donna Noble in Catherine Tate in her first appearance as Donna Noble. The episode is so entertaining. The first 20 minutes of that episode is so tight. You know, with Donna getting the TARDIS parking in London, then she's trying to get a cab, and then she realises that the cab, you know, the taxi she has got into is actually trying to kidnap her, and then she jumps onto the TARDIS, and the TARDIS is on the motorway, and that whole first 20 minutes of The Runaway Bride is so tight and it's so memorable. I'll often watch that first 20 minutes when I'm feeling down, and I just go, yes! It makes me want to fist pump, you know, when Donna jumps into the TARDIS, when they're on the motorway, and the CGI with the TARDIS on the motorway has still held up really well. I mean, it looks a bit 2006, sure, but it's held up really well. I'm watching it going, wow, and there's so many memorable lines. Like when Donna arrives in the TARDIS wearing her wedding dress, the Doctor goes, why are you dressed like that? And Donna says, I'm going 10 pin bowling. Why do you think? It's so funny. And then she's in the taxi and the doctor's trying to save her, and she goes, Santa's a robot. And it just makes me laugh so much. Then when you see the doctor and Donna and the pogo sticks, they just burst out laughing, even so they're trying to stop the end of the world. It's really, really funny. And then when Donna gets back to the reception, her wedding reception, and she says to the doctor, they had the reception without me. It's so many classic lines in The Runaway Bride, and I love this episode so much. It also feels Christmassy, and I like the inclusion of a Christmas villain. You know, not only do you have the killing Christmas tree back, the robot Santas are trying to kill people with the brass instruments, you also have this star in space, which is very Christmassy, and the episode has a very good Christmassy feel to it. Much like Christmas Invasion, and one thing I forgot to mention that I loved about Christmas Invasion was how the episode ends with the 10th Doctor choosing his clothes, and then he goes to have dinner with Rose and her family. He goes to have Christmas dinner with Rose and her family at that, and I love that about it, and it's something I also love about this episode, where at the end, he doesn't go to have Christmas dinner with Donna and the family, even so she asks him to, because of the kite storm, because of what we've seen happen with Rose. And the episode is one you can just jump straight into, having not seen the previous series, and you can still really enjoy this episode. Because I haven't watched that first series with David Tennant in a very long while, and yet I can still rewatch this. In fact, I do still rewatch it every Christmas, and I don't feel like I need to rewatch the previous episode to understand what's going on. You may have a couple of questions here and there, but it's all very accessible. And that's another reason I love The Runaway Bride. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. I think it's fantastic. So, then we move on to the next Doctor Who Christmas special, which came out on Christmas Day 2007, and that is, of course, Voyage of the Damned. And this was the first and only Doctor Who episode to include Kylie Minogue as the Doctor's companion. I mean, she doesn't... You can argue that she doesn't actually play the Doctor's companion in this episode, but she may as well. She is in this episode. She has a bunch of romantic moments with the 10th Doctor. And this episode, although I don't love it quite as much as I love Runaway Bride, I think it is a very, very good episode. It's very, very good. The whole stuff with the Titanic in space, and then it's crashing down to Earth in the final act. This episode has a couple of problems. The main villain in this episode, what's it called, Max somebody? Even forgot the second name of the character, which is not a good thing. But at the same time, though, the main villain doesn't really work. He feels like a Blofeld ripoff, you know, from Bond. And some of the sets and some of the CGI look a bit dated now. And there were some parts of the episode which don't totally work that well, don't totally work as well as it could do. But I don't care about the problems that this episode had. You know, I don't care that this episode gets a bit convoluted with all the sci-fi elements, because it's so entertaining. It's directed in such a way that you really can't keep your eyes off the screen. From the opening moment when the Doctor walks into this bar that is being held on the Titanic in space, and you hear the Murray Gold music played in the background, and it's quoting all these famous Christmas carols, and it just makes you feel all warm and Christmassy. And then you see him walking around the ship, and he bumps into Kylie Minogue, and he gets to know her. And I love how the episode, from the get-go, literally introduces us to the kiters, to the group of kiters we're going to be following the episode, just like that. It doesn't feel messy, even so following about 7 main kiters in this episode. It never feels messy, and I love how it introduces into the main players just like that, in a way where you know who's who, you know what sort of characters they are, and the episode does a great job at showing you character development for these characters and giving you some really meaningful moments. There's that moment in the episode where the asteroids have hit the Titanic in space, and the Doctor says, I'll lead the way, and then that really egotistical guy goes, why you? And then the Doctor gives this heroic speech saying, I'm from Gallifrey, and blah, all that, and there's the Murray Gold music playing in the background, you know, reinforcing the heroic nature of the Doctor's speech, and you know, it's just such a memorable moment, and such a meaningful moment. And then later on in the episode, where that egotistical guy has survived, he survived all the stuff that the Doctor's been through on this Titanic in space, and the older man, it's played by a famous actor, I'm getting the name off the top of my head right now, but the older man says to the Doctor, He's not the person you would have chosen to survive. But if you can choose people to survive, but if you can choose who lives and dies, that would make you a monster. And it's such a brilliant line. It's lines like that which remind me how much I really loved the David Tennant era and the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who. It's moments like that when it's like Russell T Davies was just one of the best writers working in TV. I love the villains as well. I mean, not the main villain, but these gold angels. It's very Christmassy. You know, the whole idea of angels at Christmas. I love that, and I love how they use their halos as weapons. Some of that doesn't really work, but I just love it. And there's so many great moments. And the episode is like 71 minutes long. That's how long it said it was on BBC iPlayer. 71 minutes. And it felt like a TV movie, and I mean that in the best way possible. It felt like a proper TV movie with special moments, and it felt like a proper Doctor Who Christmas special. It had this special feel to it. I don't think the little sequence with the Queen was needed towards the end, although I love how the episode has Bernard Cribbins in. And you just think you think it's gonna be a cameo from Bernard Cribbins, the late great Bernard Cribbins at that, but then you realise actually he's Donna's grandfather. So I love how that's done. He's talking to the Doctor, and as he comes down to Earth in this little sequence, and he's saying, "Oh, you know, people are scared this Christmas," and it makes sense because people would be scared. What with the events of the Runaway Bride, the previous Christmas, and the events of Christmas Invasion, the Christmas before that, and I love how that's all played into the episode. Yeah, I think it's wildly entertaining. I think it's very, very good. And one last thing I love about this episode is the song "The Stowaway." That is sung when you see all the main characters having fun on the Titanic in space. You see some singer singing a song. It's called "The Stowaway." It's a Christmas song, and ever since I rewatched the episode yesterday, the first time in a very long time, I've been listening to that song non-stop on Spotify. It's a great song, and it's from a great episode of TV. I absolutely love this special. Anyway, then we move on to the next Doctor, which came out on Christmas Day 2008, and this episode has a bit of a has a title that kind of trolls you, because just before this special came out, or I don't know how long before the special came out, but around the time before this special came out, David Tennant announced that he was stepping down as the Doctor in Doctor Who. And then Russell T Davies comes out with this Christmas special titled The Next Doctor, and a lot of people think, oh, is this where he's going to regenerate? But then actually, there's another year of special, because after The Next Doctor, Planet of the Dead came out, which was the only Doctor Who Easter special has ever been, as far as I'm aware. And then Waters of Mars came out, and then the following Christmas you had End of Time Part 1 and Part 2. So it's almost, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's like Russell T Davies poking fun at the fans, going, actually, no, I'm not going to regenerate the Doctor here. Don't worry, he's still got 5 more specials after this. So no worries there. I love this special. I love The Next Doctor. I can understand why some people have problems with it, and I'm not sure the whole idea of this guy thinking he is the Doctor totally comes together, and this huge Cyberman, and I mean this huge Cyberman roaming about Victorian England, this Transformer-looking Cyberman, doesn't really work in the final act of the episode. That being said, again, this episode is fiercely entertaining. It really is. It's so enjoyable to watch. And it has that horror in there. You know, one thing I've mentioned is, you know, in the previous Doctor Who Christmas specials, they've all got an element of horror. And this episode has a particular element of horror, which is really memorable. When you see all these old Victorian men in their top hats in the graveyard talking to the woman who's the leader of the Cybermen. And then all these Cybermen start taking these old Victorian men down. It's harrowing. It still scares me now. I'm watching that going, wow, this is dark for a Christmas special. And it's all happening in the snow as well, which is something which just makes the sequence so much better. Yeah, really great moment. And on the topic of the Cybermen, I love how this episode shows the Cybermen in a different time. Because as far as I remember, I haven't seen the Cybermen in any other time other than modern day Doctor Who, other than this episode. You know, this episode has the Cybermen in Victorian England, which is a genius piece of writing. And I I think the episode's so good. I love the cyber dogs. I love the villain. I love David Morrissey as a person who believes he is a doctor. I don't think all that stuff totally works, but I love the explanation as to why he thinks he is a doctor. And David Morrissey plays it so well. Plus, I love how this episode was the first to come out, was the first episode after Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Two of the most emotionally riveting and emotionally wrecking episodes of Doctor Who. They do this episode, and yes, it's got some emotional moments and it's got some dark moments, but it's just a lot of fun at the same time. It's like Rusty Davis still showing, I can do the fun Doctor Who episodes. I know we just had two very emotional and moving episodes, but I can still do the fun ones. And he does it so well. And this is one of those specials I rewatch every Christmas. At least I try to, because of how great it is. And I love the childlike wonder of the episode, you know. I love when Doctor Who includes children in there, because in the end, Doctor Who is a family show. And this episode, you see children being taken in as slaves to the Cybermen, but then you see the Doctor save them all, and it's very Indiana Jones, you know, but I love that about it as well. Yeah, this episode is great. It's got a great Christmassy feel to it, with all the snow falling in Victorian England. And I love it. I love this episode. I can understand why some people won't, and I can understand why this wouldn't be someone's favourite Doctor Who Christmas special. I'm not saying it's my favourite, but I absolutely love it. Then, the Christmas following, we've got The End of Time Part 1 and 2. Part 1 of The End of Time came out Christmas Day 2009, and Part 2 came out New Year's Day 2010. And these two specials were David Tennant's final episodes as the 10th Doctor. He did return as the 10th Doctor in the 50th anniversary special, and he did return as the 14th Doctor in the 60th anniversary specials. But this was his first time. Sorry, not his first time. What am I saying? This was his final time playing the 10th Doctor all by himself. Because in the 50th anniversary special, he's alongside John Hurt's War Doctor and Matt Smith's 11th Doctor. And this is his final time playing the 10th Doctor and leading the episode. And these two episodes, this final story for David Tennant's 10th Doctor, is fantastic in my opinion. Now, the two specials are very messy, and they do feel at times like Rusty Davis is throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, and he's trying to do so much, and he's got all these ideas left in him about Doctor Who, and he's trying to make them all fit in some places, and the episode does become too convoluted, and I don't quite understand what happens to the Master. I don't quite remember what happens to the Master at the end of the second at the end of the second part, at the end of The End of Time Part 2. That being said, there's so much to enjoy about these two episodes. First of all, having Wilf as the companion in these two episodes is a great move. And then bringing Donna back, because by this point, Donna's mind had been wiped. She can't remember anything about her time with the Doctor, otherwise her mind would explode. But then they bring her back in these last two specials, and you can see her memory starting to come back a little bit, and it actually ties into some of the threads for the 60th anniversary specials, more specifically the Star Beast, the first of the 60th anniversary specials. And I love how that's done. I love how they didn't have to bring Catherine Tate back as Don Noble, but they did, and it worked narratively very well. But yeah, having Wilf, having the late great Bernard Cribbins as the main companion of these two specials is just brilliant. And he is so funny in these two specials. You know, he's got this group of people his age who are going to try and find the Doctor. And I love when they do find the Doctor, and the Doctor goes, people have been looking for me their entire lives, and you find me in one day? And that's actually slightly hinting at where the Doctor's fate leads at the end of the 6th anniversary special. It's the end of the giggle. You know, when he goes and settles down, swallow it here for people who haven't seen the 6th anniversary special, when he settles down with Donna's family. And it's hinting at, you know, the Doctor keeps running into Donna and her family. Time and the events of what's taking place keep forcing him to run in that family, because it's time telling him, you need to stop. And I love how Russ T Davies made some moments like that, moments like Wilf somehow managing to find the 10th Doctor in one day become significant. Plus, I love how these two specials got John Sim back as the Master. Because one of my favourite parts of David Tennant's era of Doctor Who was John Sim as the Master. He exuded so much energy and passion into that role, and you can tell how much he was loving it. I mean, he was chewing up scenery whenever he played the Master, but you can tell, it didn't matter. It just worked. I love how he's back. I love they have Timothy Dalton, probably my favourite Bond actor to play Bond, as a leader of Gallifrey. I love all that. I love how Brian Cox, the actor Brian Cox at that, not the scientist, Brian Cox, the actor from Succession, voices one of the Oods in the first of the specials. And yeah, these episodes are so good, and there's a bit of a Christmas feel to them. I will admit, I wish there was more Christmassy aspects to these two specials. It does feel more like a grand finale to David Tennant's era, to the Russ T Davies era of Doctor Who, but that also sort of saves it for me, because the episodes do feel grand and they do feel like Russ T Davies pulling out all the stops and making people get emotional, because these two episodes are emotionally riveting. They're so emotionally riveting. Like in the final moments when the Master and Timothy Dalton's characters have gone back to Gallifrey and the Doctor goes, I can do so much more. I can do so much more. And you feel that. Every line of dialogue that David Tennant says in his final 20 minutes as a Doctor, as a 10th Doctor, that is so powerful. You can tell how much he loved playing this role. I also love when you see all the people in the world turning into the Master. I was flabbergasted by that, because there are times in big budget movies nowadays where the same actors meant to be playing multiple characters. A big example for me there is The Flash, where Ezra Miller is meant to be playing two characters. Yet, you can tell at times that he's not, and you can tell at times that the CGI in his face, you can just tell that the CGI in Ezra Miller's face drawing The Flash doesn't look real. Yet, you have John Sim's face on literally everybody in the world on these two specials, and it looks phenomenal. I don't know how they did that, especially because I watched some of the behind the scenes on Journey's End when you have two David Tennant Doctors, and the director was talking about how much money it costs to have two David Tennants in the same shot, if you follow my thinking. And then you watch The End of Time Part 1 and 2 and like, how much money did it cost to have, 50 versions of John Sim's face in the same shot? I love all that. And of course, you get to the final moments with David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, and he says, I don't want to go. And the musical score is like, ba da da da, ba bum 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 bum. That to me is still the most emotional and gut-wrenching of any of the Doctor Who regenerations. I love it. It's so well done. And then you get the little introduction to Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. I think that's done very well too. And it's like, knees, I've still got knees. Am I girl? I think that's done great. But David Tennant's regeneration is one that's been completely unmatched in my opinion. I love the last 20 minutes of that episode, and where you see him saying goodbye to all his companions. You just have little cameos from all of them. You have a cameo from Rose, a cameo from Mickey and Martha, who are now apparently married. You have a cameo from Captain Jack, and then the sailor from the Voyage of the Damned. You have a cameo from, what's her name? The one who, when the 10th Doctor turns into a human in the Scarecrow episode, he falls in love with. I've forgotten the name of the actress at the top of my head right now, but she has a little cameo in the last 20 minutes. I love this special. I love those two specials. I love how grand and how finale feeling they have as well. Yeah. Love the End of Time Part 1 and 2. Although I can understand why some people wouldn't. Then we go into Matt Smith's first Christmas special as the Doctor, which is titled A Christmas Carol, and the episode came out on, you guessed it, Christmas Day 2010. And this special is a fairy tale full of love. Catherine Jenkins singing, the late great Michael Gambon giving a very good performance as this Scrooge-like character, and the story of A Christmas Carol, which we all know most memorably played for the Muppets. This story, which we all know, told in a very Doctor Who fashion. I really liked A Christmas Carol on a rewatch, but I can't say I love it, because I don't think the episode totally comes together, and I'm not sure if the idea of A Christmas Carol completely works either. And I don't think these episodes needed, I don't know if this Christmas special needed Amy and Rory to be in it, especially when they're wearing their most memorable outfits from the previous series. You know, Amy is dressed in her kissogram outfit where she's dressed as a police officer, and Rory is dressed as a Roman, and there wasn't really a good explanation as to why they're dressed like they are. There is something, but I completely forgot what it was. I don't quite understand the spaceship falling to Earth, and I'm not sure if the whole idea of the fishes living in the air alongside all these human characters in this world where most of the episode takes place really works either. That all being said, the episode is really entertaining though. I got invested into the love story in this episode, into the love story between the younger version of Michael Gambon's character and Catherine Jenkins' character, when you see them meeting up over these periods of time. Every Christmas they meet up and you see them fall more and more in love. I got invested in that love story far more the second time than I was expecting to. I got really invested in that. And Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor in this episode, you can tell he's just relishing having a Christmas special, doing his very first Christmas special as the Doctor. When his introduction, he says, "Well, it's Christmas, I saw a chimney, and I just thought, what the hell?" Because he comes through on a chimney, and I love that, and Matt Smith is giving it his all, and I do think he saves quite a lot of this episode, actually, and the moment we see Catherine Jenkins singing, this phenomenal singer, singing towards the end, is very sweet, and it's very lovely, and the Murray Gold score coming in the background, it's a very good moment. For me, the episode gets a little too melodramatic and feels a little too much like a fairy tale. It feels like Stephen Moffat, as I already kind of spoke about earlier today in this podcast, it feels like he didn't really know how to write Doctor Who Christmas specials, so he makes them too fairy tale, so it appeal to younger audiences, and I don't know if it really worked. That being said, again, I really enjoyed the episode, and I liked how it I like how Doctor did their own take on the Christmas Carol story, and I think the late great Michael Gambon at that, is very, very good in this episode. I think he's very, very good, and I love how he's in there. And again, I think it's a really enjoyable episode. Just not great. Then we get to Matt Smith's second Doctor Who Christmas special, which was The Doctor, the Window, and the Wardrobe. I think that's the name of the episode. I'll just double check there. Is it The Doctor, the Window, and the Wardrobe? One sec. Yeah, I got it right. The Doctor, the Window, and the Wardrobe. So this episode released on Christmas Day. Yet again, Christmas Day, 2011. This episode's okay. It's not particularly memorable, but it's also not terrible to watch. Matt Smith carries a lot of this episode as the 11th Doctor, and there's some interesting ideas in there. Furthermore, I love the ending of this episode, where you see the Doctor show up at Amy and Rory's house because they haven't been in the rest of this episode, and at the very end, he shows up at their house, and Amy says, "We have a spot already made for you on the table for Christmas dinner." It's something like that. She says something like that. And it's a very emotional moment that I think hits right in the feels, because on the series before, Amy and Rory think the Doctor has died. So, that moment when he sees him again at the end of the episode, there's something very emotional about that, and it played very well with the Doctor feeling a tear on his cheek. Yeah, Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, and Arthur Darvill do a very good job in that scene with their performances. But the rest of the episode, it's not terrible, it's not unwatchable. It's got a Christmassy feel to it, and I think the last episode did as well. I think A Christmas Carol had a very Christmassy feel to it, and so does this one. It has a Christmassy feel to it, and the performances are all good. But there's a lot of wasted potential in this episode. There's a lot of wasted potential and moments which, and sequences which I don't think totally work. And again, it feels very much like a fairy tale, even to the point that it is basically the Doctor's take on the Narnia story. You know, the first Narnia book is called The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This episode is called The Doctor, the Window and the Wardrobe. They've literally got the same names. Well, basically, they may as well have the same names. And the episode just feels very much like a fairy tale, which is the point that they go into this world, and the mother of the family, played by Claire Skinner, who is trying her best, and I love her and Outnumbered as a mother, and she's trying her best here, but I'm not sure if that all works either. And then Bill Bailey pops up at one point, and Bill Bailey is absolutely hilarious, but his character feels completely wasted. It feels like they could get Bill Bailey for a Doctor Who episode, but they didn't know where to include him, and that's exactly what happens when he shows up. Then Alexander Armstrong, who's this World War II pilot, somehow comes back at the end of the episode. It's very mushy, this episode. It's all about family, and then it becomes very melodramatic at the end. I mean, I don't mind the melodramatic side when you get to Amy and Roy's house, but everything before, it's just, it's fine. It's not bad, it's just fine. You know, one of the biggest missed opportunities for me was when you see the youngest kid in the family, he picks up a bauble on this tree and this forest and this other world, and you think something's going to happen from that, and it doesn't really. As far as I can remember, it doesn't really. Yeah, the episode is okay. It's watchable. Matt Smith carries a lot of it, but there's nothing particularly memorable about it either. It's not one of the best Doctor Who Christmas specials by a long shot. Then you get into Matt Smith's, if I count correctly, third Doctor Who Christmas special, which is titled The Snowmen, which released on Christmas Day 2012. So, this episode had such a great setup. These snowmen that are trying to kill people in Victorian England, again, if I remember correctly. Yeah, pretty sure it's Victorian England. These snowmen that are trying to kill people. Richard E. Grant, I'm pretty sure it's a self-confessed Doctor Who fan, Whovian at that, getting around trying to, Richard E. Grant's character is controlling the snowmen. He's the main villain of the episode. You can tell he's eating it up. You can tell he is eating it up as a villain. He is brilliant. And I love the whole idea of the snowmen. Jenna Coleman isn't bad as Clara in this episode. And there are things to admire. I like how the Doctor doesn't want to travel with anyone. I like how he's completely shut himself away from people after he'd lost Amy and Roy to the Weeping Angels. And side note here, that episode before is such a slap in the face. The last episode, which includes Amy and Rory in the final moments when they die from the Weeping Angels, I just rewatched it recently. It's so bad. It's so bad, especially if you really liked Amy and Roy as the Doctor's companions, because it's like one slap in the face. Remember how much you liked them as the companions? Oh, don't worry, they're not going to be here anymore. They're gone. Anyway, that's another topic for another day. And yeah, I like how the Doctor's very reserved after losing them too. But then the episode, in its second half, falls apart. And it becomes like one huge setup for the rest of the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who, for the rest of the 11th Doctor's run. Because Clara dies, but it's not Clara. It's like another version of Clara, because we've already met a version of Clara a couple episodes beforehand in the Dalek Asylum, in which Clara is known as a souffle girl, if I remember correctly. And then we meet her again in modern times, the episode after this. But, as I've already spoken about early on in this podcast, I don't like when Doctor Who Christmas specials are not self-contained. I prefer when they are more self-contained. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind some connections with other episodes, sure. But there's a whole section of this special which is just a straight-up setup for the next couple episodes with Matt Smith as a Doctor alongside Clara. It doesn't work that well. And I know people love Clara as a companion. I know people really loved her. Personally, I didn't. I'm sorry, I just didn't really like the Clara companion. And I don't quite understand the whole storyline with her. You know, the whole thing with the impossible girl. It just annoyed me. She was in the Dalek Asylum. She was in this episode and she came back in the following episodes. I don't quite understand that. And this episode really didn't. It didn't really. No, I didn't mind it. That's what I'm trying to say. I didn't mind it, but it had so much potential. This idea of these killer snowmen, but then it felt like the episode became more about Clara, more about the Doctor trying to save her. And I understand why. I just don't think it worked, because after a while, it feels like the episode has pretty much completely forgotten about Richard E. Grant's villain. Also, it feels like Stephen Moffat was getting the script mixed up with the BBC Sherlock series starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman when he was writing this episode, because Sherlock Series 3 was coming out not long after this special aired, as far as I remember. Yeah, Sherlock Series 3? Wait, I can't remember actually. Was Sherlock Series 3 in 2013? I think it was. Anyway, Sherlock was going on around the same time as the point I'm making. Sherlock was going on around the same time. And Stephen Moffat was writing both seasons at the same time. He talks about how it was a very stressful experience, and I can imagine that it was. But at the same time, though, there's one moment in this episode where Matt Smith, as the 11th Doctor, dresses as Sherlock Holmes, and it's like, oh, they just get the scripts mixed up. I mean, what is this? Because I don't think it was a coincidence either that Sherlock had a Christmas special like a year later, which included Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock and Martin Freeman as John Watson going back to Victorian England. Somehow, I haven't seen that special in a long time, but it included something like that, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Yeah, the episode, it started off really well. I was watching it going, actually, this episode's far better than I remember it being. Then by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, it's just set up. It's just set up. I don't care anymore. Yeah. Wasn't my favourite, to say the least. Then you get on to Matt Smith's final Christmas special, final Doctor Who Christmas special, which released on Christmas Day 2013. And this episode is titled The Time of the Doctor. There is a lot to like about this episode, a hell of a lot to like. First of all, this is the episode where Matt Smith's Doctor regenerates into Peter Capaldi's Doctor. And the farewell speech that Matt Smith gives as the 11th Doctor is beautiful. It's just beautifully moving, and it's so poignant. You know, when he says that, if you think about it, it's something like this. If you think about it, we're all different people, always changing, and that's good as long as we remember the people we were before. And then he looks into the camera. Matt Smith looks into the camera and says, I will never forget when I was a Doctor. And every time I rewatch that scene, and just think about it now, it makes me very sad. Because even so, I ended up falling off the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who. Even so, it didn't work for me the more it went on. I love that final speech. And I loved Matt Smith as a Doctor, and it's a very emotional speech because I always want to see him back. I want to see him back under a different showrunner, somebody who is not so sci-fi heavy, you know, because that's what happens in this episode. It gets very sci-fi heavy, with the Doctor staying in this town called Christmas, and you get all this stuff with all the Doctor's villains trying to take him down, and it's like, what? It becomes really convoluted, really confusing, and in the end, for me, the most memorable part of the episode is Matt Smith's farewell speech as the 11th Doctor. That is the most memorable part of the episode for a long shot. And then when you see Karen Gillan return in a cameo to say goodbye to the 11th Doctor as Amy Pond, it's like the cherry on the ice on top of the cake, and the music, you know, it just swells in. It's such a good goodbye to. It's such a brilliant regeneration speech. It's such a brilliant goodbye, and such a beautiful goodbye, such a moving goodbye to Matt Smith's Doctor. I don't think it's quite as good as David Tennant's regeneration, but it's close. It's damn close. There were other things I like about this episode. I like that we get to see a lot of the villains that the 11th Doctor faces off come back. We get to see the Weeping Angels come back very briefly. We get to see the Silence come back. A villain I thought was a great idea, really not that well executed. Another topic for another day, though. I like that. I think the Cybermen come back, and we see a wooden Cybermen. I like that the Daleks come back. I like that we get all these elements come back from the 11th Doctor's era. But again, it just becomes convoluted and all over the place and really confusing. I don't really understand how Clara manages to keep travelling back to this world where the Doctor is, because he keeps trapping her on Earth, and then she keeps somehow coming back to this world where the Doctor is. And I don't really understand how that happens. I mean, I understand once because somebody takes her there, but then it happens like 3 times, and I don't understand the other 2 times. Also, I'm not totally sure why the Doctor was aging in the episode. That didn't really make sense to me. And why was there an explanation given as to why the 11th Doctor could regenerate into the 12th Doctor? I don't really understand that either. There's a lot in this episode which I really didn't get. It's an okay episode. It's not a bad watch, and the Murray Gold musical score is soaring in this episode. But it left me feeling more confused than satisfied. It didn't feel like a proper conclusion to Matt Smith's era of the Doctor. And it could have. You know, at the end of time, part 1 and 2 feel like a proper conclusion to David Tennant's era of the Doctor, in my opinion. But this special doesn't. The Time of the Doctor does not. It also feels a bit like, you know, Stephen Moffat didn't know how to follow up the 50th anniversary special, because if I remember correctly, this was the first episode after the 50th anniversary special. And it felt like he didn't know how to follow up that. And you can tell. Also, I hate the Christmas stuff that is shoehorned into this episode. This whole idea of a town called Christmas. That is completely, and I mean completely, shoehorned into the episode. Also, the opening... Actually, no, the opening isn't shoehorned in. But when the Doctor shows up and meets Clara's family at Clara's family's Christmas dinner and he's naked, that's quite funny. I'll give the episode that. And it has its moment. And Matt Smith gives one final emotionally riveting performance as the 11th Doctor. But the episode itself, I think, lets him down a bit. I really do think it lets his... I don't think it's a great conclusion to his era. But that's just me. Anyway, then we move on to the first of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who Christmas specials. And this, his first Doctor Who Christmas special, was titled Last Christmas. And it came out on Christmas Day, 2014. This episode is actually probably my favourite, or one of my favourites, of the Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who, of the 12th Doctor era. Because it's actually really entertaining and it's got some really good ideas in there. It doesn't quite come together again for me, and it becomes a bit melodramatic in the end. Like, I don't quite understand in the end why we meet an older version of Clara. I didn't quite get what the episode was going for then, but I like the whole idea of the episode being Alien meets John Carpenter's The Thing meets Inception meets Santa Claus, because you have Nick Frost in this episode playing Santa Claus and doing such a lovely job at playing Santa Claus at that. He's brilliant as Santa Claus, and that's such great casting. I can't think of better casting. I really can't. After this episode, I wanted to see a Nick Frost Santa Claus movie. You know, a British version of the Tim Allen Santa Claus movie. That's better, with more British comedy and with Nick Frost in the lead role. That'd be great, because he is great as Santa, and I like how they incorporated Santa into this episode. The whole idea of people all thinking about him around Christmas. And I think the supporting cast do a great job. I will say that Santa's elves in this episode were a bit annoying. I didn't buy into them as elves. It's a nitpick, that, but it was something which did bother me. But yeah, I think this is actually a really enjoyable episode. Some really great ideas. I don't think it's quite as standalone as it could be. You know, you do see Clara's boyfriend return, and apparently he died, and I don't remember how he died during the Peter Capaldi of Doctor Who. So I was watching that going, oh, he's back, but he's not back. You know, I don't quite understand that. Still, enjoyable episode. Yes, it's fairy tale. It feels very fairy tale-esque. But it's got enough in there for me to enjoy. I actually think this is one of, if not the best, Stephen Moffat Doctor Who written Christmas special. Did I say that correctly? I don't know. I've been going on this podcast for a while now. My head is just completely all over the place. But I do think that you can hear the bell going there. Anyway, yeah, I do think this is actually Stephen Moffat's best written Doctor Who Christmas special. I said it correct there. Anyway, then we move on to Peter Capaldi's second Doctor Who Christmas special, which is titled The Husbands of River Song, which released on Christmas Day 2015. This episode is wildly miscalculated. Let's talk about the positives to start off with. Peter Capaldi is trying his best in this episode. He really is. I like seeing Alex Kingston back as River. I think that's a great idea for her to meet all the Doctors. And I thought it was a huge missed opportunity that they didn't have her meet the 13th Doctor. I get that it wouldn't really make sense. Who cares? It's Doctor Who. They break canon all the time. It's well made. It's got some good parts to it. It feels Christmassy to a degree. You know, it's snowing in the episode. There's some good ideas in there. Sure. The episode is so weird to watch, though. It's a very strange episode that doesn't really work, and I don't quite understand the point of it. I don't quite understand what this episode was trying to do. Why did River Song come back in this episode? I'm not quite sure. And listen, I think Alex Kingston was great as River Song, and when I was watching the first couple of seasons when Matt Smith was the Doctor and she was River Song, and when she was in those episodes, it was great. But I don't think she plays River Song well here. I think it kind of feels like she's forgotten how to play River Song in this episode. I think she's okay, but it feels like she's playing, and it feels like she's doing an impression of River Song. Still, I'd like to see the character back. You know, it just feels like in this episode in particular, she's forgotten how to play River Song, and it's a confusing episode. Like, she's forgotten who the Doctor is, she knows who the Doctor is, but she doesn't know it's Peter Capaldi's Doctor, but she does, but she doesn't, but she does, but she does. I don't care. It goes to the point with the episode, like, I don't care if you remember who the Doctor was. I don't care if you remember who the Doctor is. I don't care anymore, because I just lost it with this episode. Like, what is it doing? It becomes really melodramatic towards the end when she's talking about you always said you would take me on a meal on this planet and you never have, and then the Doctor goes, just wait there or something like that. I can't remember what he says. I think I'm making this up now, but he does something like that, and they do have a meal on this planet. It's just really melodramatic, and this is all subjective. If you enjoyed Matt Lucas in the Doctor Who episodes, Doctor Who at all, you know, because he was in Doctor Who for a while. If you enjoyed Matt Lucas in Doctor Who, I'm so jealous, because I really like Matt Lucas as a comedic actor. I think he's really funny. I thought he was great in Wonka, which came out earlier this year. I think he is so miscast in this role. I did not like him in Doctor Who at all, and I did not like him in this episode at all. He's trying to be funny too much. I don't know if Matt Lucas can deliver other people's scripts in a very funny way. That being said, he was funny in Wonka, so he can, because he didn't write Wonka. But it feels here like he doesn't know what to do with Stephen Moffat's script. Matt Lucas is wildly miscast, and Greg Davis sticks out like a sore thumb in this episode. Why the hell was Greg Davis in this episode? Why? Again, I don't mind Greg Davis. I've seen some stuff I found him funny in. I've seen some stuff I haven't found him funny in. I didn't like him in this at all. I don't understand why Greg Davis was in this episode. And they're only casting decisions, sure. But when, like I said, they stick out like a sore thumb, they become annoying. And the episode itself, who's the villain? Please tell me who the villain is in this episode. I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't understand who the villain is in this episode. It's just like, oh god, just thinking about it now, it makes me cringe a bit, because I'm not really sure what the episode was doing. And it feels very much like a fairy tale. Too much like a fairy tale. It's like the story of River and the Doctor. That's what it feels like. It's like, you can imagine this being a book, you know? Being a children's book. It doesn't really work. It just annoys me. Yeah, this was at the point where Doctor Who started to annoy me more, I'm not going to lie. Still, there's a Christmassy feel to it, and Peter Capaldi tried his best as a 12th Doctor in this episode, but yeah, it just didn't really work for me. Then we go on to Peter Capaldi's third Doctor Who Christmas special, which released on Christmas Day 2016. And this episode is titled The Return of Dr. Mysterio. Now, a lot to like about this episode, for definite. The whole idea of Superman and Lois Lane done in a Doctor Who format, great. But where was the Christmassy aspect of this episode? Please tell me where it was. It might snow in the opening moments of the episode. That doesn't count, though. It snows in other Doctor Who episodes. It snows in that episode where David Tennant and Catherine Tate, the Doctor and Donna, go to see the Ood at the start of Series 4. It snows in that episode, but that's not a Christmas episode. It's snowing at the start of this episode. Nothing else in this episode gives you the Christmas feels, though. None of it feels Christmassy. It's not a badly written episode, but it feels like a non-Christmas Doctor Who episode. It feels like Stephen Moffat had this great idea for a Doctor Who episode, but I think this was like the first episode after the Husbands of River song. It'd been a full year since Doctor Who, so he wanted to get it on paper, get it out as quick as possible. But really, you should have had a more Christmassy episode, because there's a scene in this episode which takes place at a school. I can imagine kids watching that part of this episode and getting depressed on Christmas Day watching Doctor Who Christmas special, and there's a scene there which takes place at a school. That's how I felt when I watched the special for the first time. I watched it and I was still at school or college or something. I forgot now off the top of my head, but I remember watching it feeling, oh, it's a bit depressing seeing a school in a Doctor Who Christmas special, seeing all these young teenagers at school. Like, why the hell have you done that? It's just made me depressed. I don't want to feel depressed on Christmas Day. Anyway, it's just a nitpick. And it's not a nitpick, actually. It's a big thing. And why doesn't the episode feel more Christmassy? Because if it did feel more Christmassy, with a Christmas villain, I think this might actually be one of the best Doctor Who specials, one of the best Doctor Who Christmas specials ever. Genuinely, I think it would. But it doesn't have a Christmassy villain. The villains in this episode are completely forgettable. And do they survive? I don't care. And it annoys me that perhaps it's implied that the villains do survive, because I know some Whovians and some Doctor Who fans may like the fact that the villain survives because they can come back in the next series and all that jazz. Personally, I don't like that, though. As we mentioned, I want a Doctor Who Christmas special to stand on its own for the most part, and this one doesn't really with the ending. I like the whole idea of this Superman-like character. I like his I like his alternative identity, where he's his male nanny. The Lois Lane-like character gets a bit annoying, I will admit, but I like what Stephen Moffat was going for. It just doesn't feel Christmassy. Superheroes shouldn't work in Doctor Who, and they do in this episode. And there is some great moments, like when the 12th Doctor is talking about the loss of Clara at the end, and Peter Capaldi is trying his best yet again in this episode. But it lets me down because it's not a Christmassy episode. It's nothing about this episode, at least from my memory, is Christmassy. And, I didn't watch the episode that long ago. And I want the Christmassy element of my Doctor Who episodes and my Doctor Who Christmas specials to be memorable. And nothing in this special has anything Christmassy about it. Not a bad episode of Doctor Who, but not a good Doctor Who Christmas special. Then, we got there in the end. We get to the final Doctor Who Christmas special to be released so far. And that was Peter Capaldi's final Doctor Who episode, titled Twice Upon a Time, which released on Christmas Day 2017. I think people can already tell what I think of this one. I do not like this special. I really don't like it. It's my least favourite Doctor Who Christmas special. There are things to admire, for sure. Peter Capaldi gives a very good final performance as a Doctor. His regeneration speech, love hard, run fast, be kind. Doctor, I let you go. It's not my favourite of the regeneration speeches. It's not as good as Matt Smith's regeneration speech, in my opinion, but it is a good regeneration speech. And I think David Bradley, who I love seeing in things, by the way, I love David Bradley as an actor, I think it's a very good job playing a believable version of William Hartnell as the very first Doctor. Because in this special, we see the 12th Doctor meet the first Doctor. And I like how that's done. I like the interactions between both. I think Mark Gatiss, as this World War II soldier, is also good in the episode. Some of the set design works well. I like the idea of setting part of the episode during the Christmas truce. And I'm struggling after that, though, to say nice things about the episode. Murray Gold's score is good. Murray Gold's score tries to add some excitement into the episode, but the rest of the episode is dull, it's unexciting, and it's really confusing and very sci-fi heavy. You know? I'm not quite sure what Stephen Moffat was going for with this episode, because there's even a point in this episode, I only remember this because I watched it yesterday, because I don't think it's a particularly memorable episode, but there's even a point in this episode where Peter Capaldi goes, "Oh, it's not a big villain I have to fight in the end. I don't know what I have to do now. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do if it's not a big villain." He says something like that, and I'm there going, "Thank you, Peter Capaldi. Thank you, because you're saying it. You're saying what we're all thinking. Why the hell is there not a big villain in this episode, in Peter Capaldi's final episode as the Doctor?" I don't understand what their plan was with this episode. Now, I was reading something today, and I read that apparently there's actually Stephen Moffat wrote this episode as more of a gift for Chris Chibnall, because Stephen Moffat was leaving as showrunner after this episode, and Chris Chibnall was coming on as showrunner for the Jodie Whittaker as Doctor Who. And I read that apparently he did this as a gift to him, so it's a bit of a bridge between the Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who and the Jodie Whittaker era, which is nice of him. But I think you can also tell that. I think you can tell that Stephen Moffat had mentally already moved on from Doctor Who, because all this stuff with the episode, all the section of the episode that takes place at the Christmas truce in World War One, again, not a bad idea, but it doesn't feel like Doctor Who. It doesn't feel like Doctor Who to me, and I'm not really sure why he did that. And I think it's because Stephen Moffat had already mentally moved on, and I think he was already thinking about writing other things. You know, I think that's what happened, and he said it there because he could, because he thought, you know what, I'm already thinking about other projects. I have a kind of idea about Christmas Trees, but I don't want to make a TV show about it. Let's include it in my final Doctor Who special. You know, don't quite understand the point of that. And then you get Peter Capaldi's companion's return for the final moments of the episode. I mean, Bill Potts, I think that's what the character's name is. She's in most of the episode, but that doesn't make sense either, because if I remember correctly, didn't she die during the Peter Capaldi, during the last couple of episodes before this? I'm sure she died, and they make a point in this episode about how she's back, and the Doctor keeps saying, no, you can't be back. My Bill Potts died, and she's saying, no, I'm her conscience. Why was she there? I don't understand that. I didn't really care for seeing Matt Lucas' cameo to say goodbye to the 12th Doctor. I didn't really care for seeing Clara say goodbye to the 12th Doctor, because that didn't really make sense, because she died. I get this might be going on in his head or something, but still, why? It just didn't work, in my opinion. The episode is so sci-fi heavy as well. There was so much talking in this episode. There was so much talking. There's no action. There's no sense of excitement. And I remember watching this on Christmas Day 2017 and thinking, I cannot wait for this episode to finish. And I haven't felt that with any other Doctor Who Christmas special. Even some of the ones I'm not too fond of, I think will be entertaining enough, and I'll get through them. I couldn't wait for this one to finish on Christmas Day. It just went on and on and on, and there's so much talking and nothing's really happening, and there's no villain. It's my least favourite Doctor Who Christmas special. It's one of my least favourite Doctor Who episodes, period. It's not a badly written episode. Actually, I'd argue it kind of is. But I can understand why some people would enjoy this special. I can understand that. But I think it's just... nothing about it really appeals to me, and it's really compelling to me, it's really captivating or engaging. And I think it's really a lackluster finale for Peter Capaldi's Doctor. I mean, I didn't really like the Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who, not because of him. I think, as I've been watching the Peter Capaldi Doctor Who Christmas specials, my feelings of him as the Doctor have actually gone up. But I think still he deserved the better ending. And I think this special sort of brings together everything I had wrong with the Stephen Moffat eras of Doctor Who, where it was a showrunner, where it just becomes too sci-fi heavy and it becomes too fairy tale again. To the point that this episode is called Twice Upon a Time. There's literally like the first line you get in a fairy tale book. Once upon a time, there was a prince. In this episode, twice upon a time. Anyway, it wasn't for me. You get the point. I do not like the episode Twice Upon a Time, and it's my least favourite Doctor Who Christmas special, but it's the last one we had. Still, I'm hoping the one we get on Christmas Day is far superior. I'm hoping the church on Ruby Road is exciting, thrilling, and doesn't have quite as much talking as Twice Upon a Bloody Time. Anyway, that's my thoughts on each Doctor Who Christmas special since the David Tennant era individually. Now it's time for the ranking. Now I'm going to rank all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and people already know what I'm going to say here. Twice Upon a Time. Again, I do not like this special. Just so much talk. There's talking when there should be action, and there's no action in there. Pardon me, there's no sense of excitement. It's not Christmassy at all, either. I mean, I know there's a Christmas truce taking place in this episode. I get that. The famous day where soldiers on both sides of the trenches met up and played football on Christmas Day in World War One. I know there's that in the episode, but it doesn't make it feel Christmassy still. There's not enough of a Christmas feel in this one. Yeah, Twice Upon a Time is by far and away my least favourite Doctor Who Christmas special. At number 12 on my rankings is The Husbands of River Song. This episode, I'll give it credit, feels more Christmassy than the last. But, as we mentioned, it's wildly miscalculated. There's all these different parts of the episode which don't really work. And it feels like they're trying to make all these ideas work, but nothing really comes together. And, yeah, I didn't really like it either. Again, although one thing I mentioned about this episode, which I do like, is a speech that River gives when she's talking about how much the Doctor means to her and how the Doctor wouldn't be here now, and then he is there now. I did like that moment, but again, way too melodramatic, way too fairy tale-esque, and way too sci-fi heavy, much like Twice Upon a Time. And number 11 on my ranking of all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials is The Return of Dr. Mysterio. Not a badly written episode, not a bad Doctor Who episode, a bad Doctor Who Christmas special though. What were the elements of Christmas about this episode? Also, why do we have to see a school in this episode? Just a small thing, but it annoyed me. I like the Superman and the Lois aspect. I really like that. But the Doctor felt unnecessary on this episode, actually. I felt he felt unnecessary. I felt that they were trying to make him do something in this episode, and the things he were given to do weren't... I didn't understand why he was doing them. So yeah, The Return of Dr. Mysterio is not a bad Doctor Who episode, but it's not a good Doctor Who Christmas special though. At number 10 on my rankings is The Doctor, The Window, and The Wardrobe. It's fine, it's watchable, there are some good elements to it, and I like the moment where Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor is the caretaker in this house, and he's going around and going, I know, to all these kids when he's showing them all the fantastical inventions he's made in this house for the kids. Because in all that sequence, you feel like the 11th Doctor is one big kid. But there's so many ideas in this episode which didn't make sense to me. Bill Bailey was wasted. I'm not really sure what happened in the end. And like in the end with the family, should I say? I like the actual ending with Amy and Roy and the Doctor going to have Christmas dinner with them too. But it's just, yeah, it's fine. It's watchable. There's nothing memorable really about it, apart from the last couple minutes of the episode. At number 9 on my ranking is The Time of the Doctor. Matt Smith gives a very emotional final performance as the 11th Doctor in a very good farewell speech where he's saying goodbye, and a very it's a meta way, and it works at the same time. I like elements of this episode. I like seeing a lot of the villains a lot of the memorable villains that the 11th Doctor faced off come back. Again, things to admire, the production value and all that jazz. But the Christmassy aspect of the episode, this whole idea of the town called Christmas, feels shoehorned in there. And the musical score, actually the musical score works really well, I don't know what I was about to say there, but it becomes very sci-fi heavy, very convoluted and very confusing, much like many of Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who Christmas specials. Then we get on to, I just lost where I was then. Then we go on to number 8 on my ranking of all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials, which is the Snowmen. Starts off really well, great idea, the killer Snowman, Richard E. Grant is great as the main villain. I like the idea of the Doctor being reserved after losing Amy and Rory. Clara has a nice introduction, it's good, it works. I like the idea of her jumping up to the ladder and then you get the endless walkway going up to the TARDIS. Again, things to like. But the second half of the special feels like they've forgotten about the Snowmen. It feels like Moffat got his script mixed up with with Sherlock, when you actually get the Doctor dressed up as Sherlock in the episode. And then a lot of the last 20 minutes of the episode, from what I remember, is set up for Clara as a companion going forward. And I do not like it when Doctor Who Christmas specials are just a setup. It's entertaining, but it leaves more to be desired, and I'm not sure if that was a good thing. Then we go into number 7 of my rankings, which is Last Christmas. Probably my favourite of the definitely my favourite of the Peter Capaldi Doctor Who Christmas specials, where it's fun and Nick Foster is great as Santa. Like the idea of Alien meets Inception, meets The Thing, meets Santa Claus, like all that sort of stuff. Yes, got some really great ideas in there. Slightly falls apart towards the end when you see old Clara, but, there's enough good stuff in the episode. And I rewatching it recently, I forgot how good some of the writing in that episode actually is. And how some of the moments are so uplifting and fill you with joy. And when you see all the people waking up in their own time, it's actually very moving. If you've seen the episode, you know what I mean there. So yeah, I liked Last Christmas quite a lot. I think it's a really entertaining Doctor Who Christmas special. Then we get on to number 6 in my ranking, which is A Christmas Carol. Doesn't quite come together. Amy and Rory, I don't think were necessarily needed in this special, but the love story does a lot of carrying for me. Michael Gambon as his Scrooge-like character is very good. Matt Smith is relishing his first Doctor Who Christmas special, and I liked how Doctor Who approached the whole idea, the whole story of A Christmas Carol. So yeah, I think it's a really good episode. I find it a little confusing though. And I find it a little too fairy tale-esque to be in my top 5. Then we get to my top 5. And at number 5 on my rankings is The Next Doctor. An episode which has some plot holes and feels... Actually, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. No, this episode, it's got its problems. I think it's wildly entertaining, though. I love the idea of seeing the Cybermen in Victorian England. David Morris is the person who thinks the Doctor is great. The musical score is great, and the cyber dogs are menacing. The scene where the Cybermen are killing the old men in the graveyard is still scary to me now, and I think it's really, really great. And I love how this came after Journey's End. I love how this episode came after Journey's End. It's a really fun episode. And one line I particularly love in the episode is when the Doctor says to this random Victorian stranger, he goes, "Help me save the world." And the stranger goes, "Why?" And he says, "I'll give you a tenner." Okay? If that was any other Doctor, they would have given a big speech saying, if you help me save the world, you'll help save mankind, and you'll help save people for years and years to come. That's what other Doctors would do. But no, they just make that little moment short and sweet, and it makes for better... It just makes for better moments throughout the episode. You know what I mean? The writing is sharp, it's witty, it's to the point, and it's really, really fun to watch. Then number 4 in my ranking is Christmas Invasion, the first episode to feature David Tennant as a 10th Doctor. It does take a while to get to him, probably doing his doctory sort of stuff in this episode, but It's still really great. The idea of the Christmas tree that's trying to kill Rose's family, the robot Santas, the Sycoraxes are great villains. I'd love to see them back. I also love how this episode, when you see the Sycorax characters, when you see all the Sycoraxes together, I don't know what the plural is for Sycorax. I'm pretty sure that's a joke made in the episode as well. But when you actually see all the Sycoraxes together, it looks like the Geonosis arena from Attack of the Clones, the second Star Wars film. So yeah, I love that. I love the little nods there. I love the sword fight at the end when you see the Doctor get his hand chopped off, and then when he keeps going. I'm that sort of person. At the very end of the episode, he chooses his clothes. That's something I wish all the Doctors did. I wish all the Doctors had a sequence where they get to choose their clothes, and the 10th Doctor does, and I love that. I love the song that plays in the background too as he chooses his clothes. And then I particularly love how he has Christmas dinner with Rose's family. It's a great episode. It's just a little dated now. It doesn't hold quite up. It doesn't hold up quite as well as some of the other specials that I've ranked higher. But it's still very, very entertaining. Then number 3 on my ranking is The End of Time Part 1 and 2. I know some people have problems with the episodes. I've seen people complain about these two specials. I understand why. There's a lot of plotting issues. They're messy. It feels like Rusty Davies, because he's on his final 2 episodes of Doctor Who. Well, because he thought then that it was on his final 2 episodes of Doctor Who, because he's back now as a showrunner, but because he thought back then that he was in his last 2 episodes of Doctor Who, he's throwing everything at the wall. It's still, this finale feel to it. It provides this grand conclusion to Doctor Who in a way that is just, it's great. And there's this energy in those 2 episodes. And seeing Wilf as the companion, played by the late, great Perna Cribbins, it's so good. And then David Tennant's regeneration as the 10th Doctor. I don't want to go. Still so emotional now, yeah. Still so emotional now. And then Johnson's back at the Master, Timothy Dalton as the leader of Gallifrey. I mean, it's all just fiercely entertaining. It really is. It's so enjoyable, and that's what I like from Doctor Who Christmas specials the most. Anyway, then we get on to number 2 on my ranking, which I only just rewatched yesterday, and that is The Voyage of the Damned, which I think is a really, really great Doctor Who episode. Kylie Minogue as a companion. I love her death in the episode, by the way. It's very heroic. So many heroic moments in the episode. It feels like a TV movie in the best way possible. Love the musical score. Love the song The Stowaway in that episode. It's become one of my favourite Christmas songs for this year. Yeah, really, really great episode. Titanic in space. What isn't there to like? And the Golden Angels as villains. It's a great Christmassy villain. Anyway, then we move on to number 1 on my Doctor Who Christmas special rankings. And that is, of course, The Runaway Bride. I love this special, and I rewatch it every single Christmas. I make a note of rewatching it every single Christmas. I even rewatched it last Christmas when I didn't rewatch a lot of the stuff I usually rewatch at Christmas, The first 20 minutes of that episode is so tight, and it does get a little convoluted and a little messy. But the eraptness and how they did that is astounding to me. Especially for an episode which came out, in 2006? It's astounding to me how they did that big, giant spider monster, how they made that work. Because it looks real, and I don't think it's CGI. Because you can tell the parts that are CGI in this episode. It's a little dated. But saying that, the TARDIS sequence on the motorway still works now. It's still great. Oh, God, I love The Runaway Bride. Love it. It's got so many classic one-liners. Love David Tennant and Catherine Tate's performance in that episode too. I love how we see Donna's character development progress, and I love the twist where you find out Donna's fiance is actually evil and has been working behind the scenes, It's a classic Doctor Who twist. And I just love it. Yeah, I absolutely love The Runaway Bride, and that's why it's number 1 on my rankings of all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials. So I'm going to go through the rankings one last time. At number 13, Twice Upon a Time. At number 12, The Husbands of River Song. At number 11, The Return of Dr. Mysterio. At number 10, The Doctor, The Window and the Wardrobe. At number 9, The Time of the Doctor. At number 8, The Snowmen. At number 7, Last Christmas. At number 6, A Christmas Carol. At number 5, The Last Doctor. At number 4, Christmas Invasion. At number 3, End of Time Part 1 and 2. At number 2, Voyage of the Damned, and at number 1, The Runaway Bride. And that is my ranking on all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials. Yes, we got there in the end. I am astonished that we did, you know. I didn't know whether we would. There we go. Using my sonic screwdriver from Matt Smith here in Doctor Who to celebrate. Hey, we got there. And no, it's come out now. Look at that. Ooh. For people who are listening on Spotify, got the sonic screwdriver out right now from the Matt Smith era of Doctor Who. Oh, it's a great sonic screwdriver. Even some of my favourite era of Doctor Who, it's definitely the Davidson era of Doctor Who. I think Matt Smith's screwdriver is better than David Tennant's. I really think it is. Anyway, yes. Love the screwdriver there. I'm going to put it away. Anyway, yes, I just wanted to put it out to celebrate. We made it to the end of the rankings. It's been a very long podcast today. So I thank you for sticking with me. And please let me know your rankings on all 13 Doctor Who Christmas specials. And let me know where maybe the Jodie Whittaker specials would fall as well. You know, I didn't give them rankings, but because they weren't, you know, they weren't Christmas specials. They were released on New Year's Day. They were New Year specials. But still, maybe you want to put them in your rankings and let me know in the comment section below. Whatever your thoughts are on the Doctor Who Christmas special. What are your favourite? What are your least favourite? What are ones you find just good, but you like watching them? Whatever your thoughts are on the Doctor Who Christmas specials, please let me know in the comment section below. And as this is my final podcast before Christmas, there you go, got the Christmas hat on, and I'm going to say goodbye. Oh, for 2023. It's been a long podcast today. Let's see how long we've gone on for. Almost an hour and a half. Wow. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I really hope you have. And as I've already said, let me know your thoughts on the Doctor Who Christmas special. Let me know your excitement for the Church on Ruby Road, which I'll probably do a quick review of either on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, so look out for that on this channel. When I say quick review, I'm just going to record that on my phone. I'm not going to do a full review like this because I'm having a break now till after the new year. So sometime, probably within the second, maybe first week of January. I'm having a break on this channel, as I usually do around Christmas, as I usually do, where I can have a rest, where I can relax from this channel for a bit and not be so stressed, and come back all refreshed, you know? Because at the moment, I'm feeling very under the weather. I don't know if people have noticed that today, but my voice isn't the best right now. I'm really not feeling that great. As soon as the podcast finishes, I'm going to go lie in that bed back there because I'm so dizzy. I've got this banging headache. But I hope the podcast has been fun to listen to nevertheless, though. I hope there has been some entertainment you found in this podcast, even though I've really struggled to do it today. So, yes, I'm really glad I did it, though, because I wanted to do this one for a while. Anyway, I'm going to round things off by saying this. Have a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. And I'll see you sometime within the new year. And also, one last thing I want to mention is that sometime within the next week, although I won't be coming out with any podcast, I may have a Christmas vlog coming out. So look out for that sometime next week. Probably on the 27th or 28th of December. But until then, guys, until 2024, when I return with these podcasts, thank you, as always, for watching or listening throughout the entirety of this year. And have, as I've already said, have a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye. Come on. Yes, bye.